Hello, guys, and thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Indiana Sports Connection, a victorious Monday edition. The Colts, yes, they beat the Houston Texans 31-20 yesterday. Finally, the Colts, and they lost 8 games in a row before getting this victory. And let's just make no bones about it. The Colts, even though Anthony Richardson got injured in this game, and we're going to talk about that in this episode, what Anthony Richardson needs to do going forward, Alec Pierce, some of the players, but the Colts, this was utter domination. Let's get right into the episode right now. So, Anthony Richardson, the first thing I want to talk about is him protecting himself in these games. He throttled down going into the end zone, and that ended up being, and apparently the Colts did not, and the announcers also. I kind of thought when I watched it in real time that I'm like, man, he really got shellacked by that safety. I guess it was the safety coming over, but he really got hit hard by him, and it ended up being, he hit the back of his head real hard. All I can say is, I know he's young. I know he's super athletic, but you got to go to the ground right there. You're never going to see Tom Brady or Peyton Manning or guys that, played 10 years without ever missing a snap. You're never going to see guys like that go flailing into the end zone like that and just take a punishing hit from somebody. Angle yourself out of bounds or just dive to the ground forward and don't take this hit. There's something in the NFL that I think takes players a while to realize, is that you're not the most athletic guy on the field anymore. Even though Anthony Richardson is big and powerful and he has all of these athletic traits, many of these safeties and corners are, if they're 5'10", 5'11", and they're just super fast, small, muscly guys that are going to lay the freaking wood to rest on you if you think you're going to just get by with making a move like that. So Anthony Richardson, I just want to see this guy kind of get down and protect himself going forward in these games because we need him out there. The other thing I think we're starting to realize is that quarterbacks like this get dinged up all the time. This is the big reason why the Ravens didn't want to give Lamar Jackson a bunch of money, because when you're running around like this and you are going to take these hits, you're going to get dinged up and you're going to miss games. So far this guy's only played 2 games, and he got a little bit injured on the first one, and then he got injured in the second one and missed some time. But, hats off to Gardner Minshew. You come in against a real crappy team. The middle of the field, like I said earlier in the week, the middle of the field was wide open. Slot receivers and tight ends just had a field day. Josh Downs, 4 catches for 37 yards. It wasn't a huge day for him, but a 9.2 average. Pretty good work for Josh Downs, making some catches and getting involved in the offense across the middle. This was going to be wide open. The Texans were going to stop the Colts from throwing the ball deep. They couldn't stop the Colts running game either. Zach Moss, a welcomed addition to the Colts. Thank you, Zach Moss, for coming in and giving us a much better running back threat. I was thoroughly impressed with Zach Moss the entire day. Every time somebody got this guy around the ankles or here or there, you thought he was going to be stopped for a loss or even stopped for no gain at all. He would always just keep fighting and got about 3 yards. And that happened 2 or 3 times. And those are critical yards on first down to make it 2nd and 7 or 2nd and 6 rather than 2nd and 10. And then you can start to press that way. So, Zach Moss, great work. And we also got a cryptic message from Jonathan Taylor. He put on this message on Instagram of him working out, and it said loading ... Let me just tell you my take on Jonathan Taylor. I think he did this with the injury on purpose so that he would never, I think he kind of set up a loophole in a way. And let me just explain what I mean. Nobody wants to ask for all this money and then go walking back to the team with your tail between your legs. So like this entire time he knew that if something came up, he could always just fall back and say, well, I was injured the entire time. And that's kind of what he's doing right now. I mean, he puts this message out there that it's like loading, ... And he's just working back from an injury, almost like, oh, the contract and the money, I wanted more money, yes. But the reason why I wasn't playing was because I was injured. We're going to see him in week 5 play some games, and we're going to find out, I mean, if he's fully healthy. Why did it take him so long to get back? There must have been some complications with the ankle injury, somewhat. But, yeah, so Jonathan Taylor, he's going to come back to the Colts. I think he just kind of set this loophole up because he was injured and because of the, cloudy skies that were surrounding that, and that he's asking for more money at the same time. I don't really know what the point of all of this was. If he really was injured, then he didn't have to act like he was holding out. But yeah, it's just very confusing. But I feel like he kind of set this up to be like that he had a loophole and he had a way back to get back to the team, because that's his only way forward. He has to play for the Colts, and he has to show that he can go out there and he can create yards and he can create big plays if he wants to get a big contract and even go to another team next year. That's his only option. He doesn't have any other option. So, I mean, whether he's going to think like he's coming back from an injury, because that's kind of what we're being made to think now, is that he was just injured the entire time and he's coming back from that injury. Moving on to something different. I don't want to talk about Jonathan Taylor anymore, because the Colts rang victorious. Yes, and Zach Moss, this guy, he's not going to hit the home run, but he was definitely just a tough runner for the Colts in this game. And the Colts line really needed a game like this. Now, I said during the week last week, Braden Smith was really going to be tested by Will Anderson on the Texans, and he was going to be coming around the edge, and he was going to be one of their main rushers. Early in the game, Braden Smith had a couple of where they're like, he's having a tough quarter for Braden Smith, and he did get a holding call on a big call. But I would say overall, he did a pretty good job, and the entire Colts line did a pretty decent job. They opened up some huge gaping holes in the running game. I mean, there were a few trap plays that the Colts ran where, I mean, there was just the size you could drive a bus through, literally, some of the holes they had out in the open space on some of those runs. Now, they closed up quickly. The Texans were, I think, a lot playing zone and things, so it was really hard to get out and, get that real big play. But, I mean, the Colts were dumping off like 7-yard runs like it was nobody's business in this game. Like, just Gardner Minshew played really well. I hope I don't have to see Gardner Minshew. I was listening to the radio show after the game, and there were people that calling in saying that Gardner Minshew should have been the starter from day one. And don't do that, because you draft a guy 4th overall with his athletic talent, with his big arm. I mean, you can see how he started the game, how electric he was. It was unfortunate he went out, but he scored 2 touchdowns in the first 6 minutes, and the Colts were off and rolling. And you can see, I mean, when this guy really just sees an opening to get into the end zone, you are not going to stop him. And the quarterback draw plays, those plays going forward are going to have teams are going to have to stay up and watch this guy, what gap he's going to choose to go through into the end zone. And that's going to open up a lot in the passing game when they're in the red zone, when you know that anywhere within the 20-yard line, this guy takes off, because his one run was like an 18-yard run. I mean, he just waltzed in the end zone. As soon as he saw the opening, there was no stopping him. So, yeah, good to see Anthony Richardson make some of those runs. But he has to get down. Get down. Shut up. You got to get down. Just get down on the ground, do anything. Take a page out of Peyton Manning's book. I mean, this guy never cared if anybody called him a pussy or anything, but I mean, as soon as he saw a guy break free from that line, he literally went down to his knees, was just like, okay, I'm going to get sacked and we'll go on to the next play, but at least I didn't get the crap beat out of me. It's just a lot to learn. If you want to play for a long time, you can't take those hits like that from those safeties. It doesn't matter who you are. I mean, we all know that from Andrew Luck. I mean, this guy's a big beast, and you just can't take hits like that in the NFL. Cam Newton, what he reminded me of a little bit on that run is Cam Newton, a guy who he's going to be just a punishing quarterback, but we all see what happened to him. He was only good for about 5 years, and then he quickly started to deteriorate because he's just getting the crap beat out of him out there. Look, there's never going to be a guy that's so big and powerful that he's going to be able to play that way in the NFL and do it year after year after year. You got to get down. Let's talk about Alec Pierce. Not that great. He's got to get better out there. I know he's still in his second year, but Alec Pierce has to get better out there. That's all I have to say about him. He had Pierce, he had 2 catches for 28 yards, a 14-yard average. That is his average, career average is 7 yard or 14 yards a play. That's his career average. So he needs to get a little bit better than that. He's got to catch some balls down the field. Michael Pittman Jr., 8 receptions for 56 yards and a 7-yard average. Were some really great possessions, receiving yards for him. Just he gets his hands on the ball, holds on to it even though people are swatting at it. Big 5th-round pick, Will Mallory. This guy could be maybe the next Jack Doyle. Jack Doyle was a guy who just came out of nowhere, it seemed, and then all of a sudden was really good for the Colts. This guy was drafted in the 5th round, had 2 receptions for 49 yards. Minshew found him out to the right, just kind of floated a pass out to him. He got behind the defense there and had a great play on that. Had a couple of really nice catches. Mo Alley Cox earlier in the game, he caught a screen pass that I thought he looked like a bobcat on that play. Not the animal, but an actual bobcat just because he was moving so slowly as he was barreling over people. But Kylen Granson, the touchdown play by Kylen Granson, that was a huge play in the game. To get that in for the touchdown, and they went to a replay on that, and he held that over the line. This guy is making huge strides for the Colts. He's just getting better and better in the passing game. They've had him flanked out in the slot a few times in this game as well, but he's doing much, much better catching the ball, the tight end position, and he's a halfway decent blocker too. The Colts are kind of just trying to figure out who's going to play tight end. We got Ogletree was in concussion protocol a little bit this week. I believe he was active on the team, but he just didn't play much. But Mallory and Granson definitely both had a couple of good games. The Colts, they did exactly what they needed to do in this game. And they're playing a less than team. We talked about earlier in the week that the Texans are the worst rated run defense in the NFL. They're also one of the worst teams in the NFL. But looking up for the Colts had lost to the Texans 2 times last year. They tied them once and they lost to them another time. And so, we can see that Steichen with Richardson, or even the guy they brought in, Gardner Minshew, Steichen is coaching this team up much better. That happens. That happens to baseball teams. Guys like Frank Reich are very soft-spoken guys, and it can work for a short amount of time. I don't really know if Steichen is the yell at everybody like the, Bill Parcells or Bob Knight type of coach, but when you have Tony Dungy, when he was at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you bring in John Gruden, who's this the exact opposite of Tony Dungy, and they win the Super Bowl. Now, when you're that type of coach and you're just a yelling coach, that can wear off after time as well. But we can see that the Colts have just a little bit more intensity out there with this coaching staff and just how they're playing right now. Like the offensive line and the defensive line just looked unstoppable in this game. Now the Colts, did they go to some prevent defense and stuff like that later on? I do. I don't put much stock in the fact that the Texans were running the ball late in the game, and they were being able to pass the ball, because the Colts, at a certain point when they were up 3 touchdowns, I thought that they don't have enough time to even come back. Their drives are going to be long drives, and the Colts are going to sit back in coverage. And that first drive, they did hold them to a field goal, and then later on, the Texans did get in for a touchdown, made it 20-31, but it never really felt like the game was in doubt, and the Colts did go to a prevent. 6 sacks. So 1, 2. Speed had a nice sack. DeForest Buckner had a sack. Kwity Paye had a sack. Ebukam had a sack. And Taven Bryan had a sack. And Jacob Martin had a sack. Everybody got a sack today on this team. But we do have to say there are 2 guys were injured on the Texans offensive line. And also their entire offensive line is rebuilt from last year. Not one starter on the offensive line for the Texans was from last year's team. So I'm glad the Colts could do what they did on defense and getting pressure, but that was to be expected, being who they were going up against. So in this game, the Colts, they took care of business. I was happy to see everything that they could accomplish in this game. This episode of Indiana Sports Connection is brought to you by Mattress Warehouse. Come to Mattress Warehouse at Lima Road. We have 3 locations in Fort Wayne. We deliver to a radius about 70 miles from Fort Wayne. We have a lot of local products from mattress companies that are within the vicinity of Fort Wayne. Get a warehouse-priced mattress, a name brand price mattress at a warehouse price at Mattress Warehouse. Come and see me. I will help you with all of your sleep needs, what you need to focus on your next bed, and we can get rid of all the old ideas about mattresses, and I'll help guide you to find something that you really need. Come see me or any of our other locations on Coliseum, Illinois Road, or Lima Road in Fort Wayne, and get a great mattress and get that great sleep that you so desire. All right, I forgot to do the advertisement, but thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Indiana Sports Connection, a fan's take on the Indianapolis Colts, and I have much more coming up, special guests and things like that we're going to get on the show. So thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Indiana Sports Connection. And until next time, go Colts. Stay classy out there, Colts fans.